Welcome to Yield Today of Dallin, Candland. I'm here with Maggie Perotin. She's a business leadership coach, has done tons of corporate training, and we're just excited to have her talk about burnout and things she's learned in her journey. So thank you for coming, Maggie.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Dallin. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to have you. And so you grew up in Poland. I've never been there. What was that kind of like? The culture, the environment, what was that like for you?
So the first, I guess, 11 years were of my life were under a communist regime. So I would say it was interesting, for lack of the better word. It was at a time where communist regime, you couldn't travel much and you didn't have freedoms that we enjoy, in North America or even in Poland now. And most people, they couldn't own any property, any business, like everything was state owned. So we I was raised like I lived in like a small apartment block in an apartment that my parents and then my parents divorced, didn't own for the longest period of time. So it was, for kids, when you're, I guess, born that way, like raised that way, it's hard to have big dreams because you're said like, oh, you can't have this, you can't stand out, you can't do this, you can't do that. But even then, like, my mom reminded me that there was a moment where I told my mom once, looking at a house that actually Russian soldiers that's stationed in our town and Russian officers occupied like a town. And I told my mom one day, like, I'm gonna have a house like this. And I'm sure that for my mom it was like an impossible, like, what are you thinking, girl? That's not gonna happen. But it's sort of like that. But then after the communist regime collapsed, Poland entered sort of like a democracy and free economy and so on. And it caused the society, many pains to get there. So when I finished university, I did a master's degree in Poland. So when I got out of university, we were faced with like 20% unemployment. And so it was very hard to find a decent job. Now again, like I was in a big city, so I found roles and I found positions where I wasn't unemployed, but they were paying like $300 a month, right? And it wasn't that much cheaper in Poland, or Poland is not that much cheaper than, let's say, North America in terms of living and so on. And my dreams of having a house still stay there. So I was like, how am I ever gonna do that? Making $300 a month. You gotta pay bills to, like, even live anywhere, you guys know, right? And get food and so on, and like nothing is left. So then one of my friends actually knew a little bit about Canada and the immigration program there. And she mentioned, like, hey, you should try. You speak English, you speak French, those are like two federal sort of languages in Canada. You should try to apply. And I was thinking, like, oh, why not? Right. Sometimes, again, we're young, there is nothing holding us back. I didn't own much, no kids, no nothing. I had a partner at the time, but we didn't have like those roots yet established. So I applied, and a year and a half later, I got a permanent residency in Canada. So that was in 2005. And that sort of led me to, really, the immigration was just to have a better life and more opportunities for me or us and my future family, because that's definitely something that I wanted to have. So
Nice. So there's a lot of learning about, just what is my limitation right now and accepting like this is not going to be my limitation forever. And then you went out and
yeah.
created that and took advantage of the opportunities that came to you. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, like figuring out, what do I want, right? And if I'm faced with the reality that maybe it's hard to achieve in that reality we want, and you can always change your circumstances, but also you need to believe that also, like, you're capable of, within, even if you change those circumstances, it's not like it's going to be all easy and hunky-dory, right? But that you're capable of just going for it and figuring it out, and creating what you want to create. So for sure.
Yeah, I think the self-confidence piece is absolutely huge. And one thing that jeopardizes that is burnout when we
Yeah.
start to, struggle with how we see our day to day, and it just starts getting a little overwhelming.
Mhm.
Where do you think burnout really comes from?
It can come from many things contribute to that, and I guess depending on your situation, it could be some of it might be more prominent than the others. Like definitely, working a lot contributes to burnout, right? Not taking care of yourself, not having enough sleep, not having proper diet, not taking breaks, not seeing that actually self-care and rest, it's incredible important for you to recharge and be able to be effective. And I think that, especially in North America, there's this culture of always working, always on, and never taking breaks and so on. And that definitely leads to that. Another thing that can contribute is doing work that's meaningless or that you're not passionate about. Because when you do first of all, when we do the work that we don't see how we have an impact and meaning, it's very demotivating for us, all of us as humans, I believe, right? We want to contribute, we want to do impact, we don't want to waste our time doing tasks that just don't take us anywhere and don't make sense, right? So even that alone, even if you don't work like, crazy person, and you have, like, let's say, more of a steady hours, that can lead to that burnt out and disengagement. And then also doing things that you are not passionate about. And I've noticed that part of it in my corporate world, that when I was doing things that I was good at, right? And people wanted me to go because I could fix things. I can look at this and, like, whatever, fix, but I wasn't passionate about. They were stressing me out much more and depleting my energy much faster. And that can also lead to burnout. As opposed to when I was doing things that I really enjoyed doing, I was getting energized by them, right? It doesn't mean it was always, again, like easy, and sometimes I wasn't stressed, but that stress didn't get to me that deep, and I was more re-energized than anything else. So all of that, right? And then there was also like, hey, if I'm doing maybe things in my professional life, but my personal life is not great, right? And I'm struggling there, that can drain the energy and impact that burnout and so on. So there's definitely um, many reasons. So, like, if you are experiencing it, really consider every area of your life and think about it. Like, what is it, right? Is it because I have a meaningless job? Is it maybe I'm working too much, right? Or maybe all of it, or maybe there's something in my personal life that's contributing to this. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree that there's definitely a real need to examine the
Mhm.
value of everything we're doing, because it's easy to keep stacking on different things, and I'm guilty of this. Like sometimes you want to do so many different
Yeah.
things that all of a sudden there's like this quote that says the biggest waste of time is to optimize solving a problem that nobody cares about. Like that really
And
doesn't
that
help,
shouldn't be so.
Like that's not good. And I think it's
Yeah.
really easy to care
Yeah.
about those different things that
Yeah.
really aren't going to help you in the
Yeah.
long term.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Like,
agree.
I can share my story because I did go through a burnout, and it wasn't a burnout when I ended up in a hospital or really bad, but it got me to the point when I was exhausted and just plain angry, right? And just angry at the situation. But I guess the anger was good because that got me thinking, saying like, no, something has to change. You can't tolerate it. But what led to it was a sort of feeling like I was being, and not only me, because it was a team that I was in at that time, we were being set up to fail in a sense that no matter how hard we tried and no matter how hard we work, we couldn't win, right? So and having, so that was one. The second one was the sheer amount of work without getting help, where just, again, no matter how long we worked, the weekends, non-weekends, it wasn't just we couldn't just process the amount of work. So there wasn't the light in the tunnel, right? And I'm pretty hardworking. Like I can pull a lot of, and students do that too, right? And overnighters and learning and preparing to the exams and so on. So like you can sometimes push yourself to do a lot, and when it's meaningful and you see the light in the tunnel, it's a little bit different. But when you don't, and you're like, there's just no way out, right? No matter what I do, and so on. So that was the second. And third, nobody cared. Nobody cared about how I felt, whether I needed help or whether just acknowledge saying, hey, I know you're working hard. Do you need anything? I get it, but keep going. Thank you so much for your help. Right. So those three things just made me feel cornered and appreciated. That led to me like, no, that's not how I want to be treated. This is not how I want to live my professional life. So that exhaustion and the anger like got me to think like, what do I want to do when I grow up or further into my, professional life. Yeah.
Yeah, I really resonate with what you said about having all these different things pile up and it seems like you can't really get out. I
Mhm,
know it's really easy to, at least with like email and other things, that
mhm,
we kind of convince ourselves that all this stuff is going to keep happening. We're not going to be able to stay on top of it. But generally, for me, I don't know about you, Maggie, but I'm in a state of my life that if I have my phone off for a couple days, like I feel like people would start to wonder. But at the same time, like I'm okay. Like, it'll be all right. A
yeah.
lot of it is in our heads. We don't
Yes,
have to
it is.
listen to different things that are going on in
Yeah.
our heads. And so often our like limiting beliefs too,
Mhm,
that leads to all kinds of different thoughts that may not even be true.
yeah.
What would you say has like been one of your biggest successes with helping somebody to change how they saw their situation? What did that look like for them?
Yeah, you're right. Like our brain is sneaky, right? And it's sneaky in a sense where it's really like at least that fear-based brain and the primitive sorts of the brain is really programmed to just keep us alive, right? And like biologically, meaning don't do too much, don't strain yourself. Energy is scarce and anything new is scary. And I'm gonna keep you from doing it because I want you to operate the longest possible with the least amount of energy usage possible, pretty much, right? But then being human, the creative brain, what makes us human is the one that dreams and has visions and wants to do more. But it requires like intentional thinking, right? In an intentional direction. So like it's a little bit of a conflict, right? Like we want to do it, but then our primitive brain, no, don't do it. And in order to keep us from doing it, it comes up with all those stories. You can't do this and so on and whatever, right? So I guess the biggest thing for me is when I actually see my clients realize that they can do much more than they thought, right? So they come to me. I'm a business coach, so of course I help them grow their businesses, but it's not just strategy. As you said, a lot of it is mindset, and I help them with that, right? So they come to me and their belief in themselves, is strong enough to seek help because that also requires belief, right? It requires to, hey, I got to invest in myself. It's going to cost me money, but I'm going to do it because I want to say yes to my future self. And that already requires courage to do and sort of invest and say yes to yourself. But once they do that, they still not always fully believe how far they can go, right? They're just like, I just want to go here. Like, I think I can do it. I want to hear. And as we coach and they start realizing that usually they get to where they want to get much faster than they thought because of the coaching and helping them with their mindset and strategy in business and so on. And then they start realizing they're seeing this whole new world of opportunity. There's like, oh my God, I can do so much more. For me, that's the most beautiful, right? Like I actually had a this week I had a client. She's actually very very young. We started working together when she was fresh out of college, and she's creative, and she didn't want to do a typical 9 to 5, and her family is not entrepreneurial. And they were like, you need to get a job, you need to do this. And she was like, but I don't want to. Right. So she had some like part-time jobs in the creative realm and like design and so on. And we started coaching together. And I remember when I was asking her, okay, well, what's your goal this year? And so on, she's like, I just want to make $3,000 a month. That's like, I'm great. Right. So we work on that. She actually, at first, she was scared to set the money goal. And very quickly last year, she started making like with no effort because she thought, oh my God, if I will want to make more, that will mean I will have to sacrifice the time with my boyfriend and sacrifice me time and I'll have to work in the corporate. I'm like, no, like $3,000 is not that much. You can make it so like really without sacrificing anything. I think as a business coach, you can make way more without sacrificing anything. But then she got herself to believe very quickly. She started making that amount. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's kind of easy, but I want to maintain it. Right. So she sort of maintained that like a little bit more throughout the year. And this year, her business is blowing up. She's really seeing that she can still maintain the lifetime she wants and make so much more money and then decide what to do with it, right? Because if you're not, let's say, motivated by money or by things and so on, it's okay. You can still make good money and do other good things with it, right? Because why not? Why not make the money you can make and just donate to the charities that you care about, right? Or to the causes that you care about, help your family, whatever the case might be. So that's for me, that's like the best thing to see when their eyes open on so much more opportunity because I truly believe as human beings, we all are capable of that, right? It's just as you say, it does require certain mindset shifts and then work towards it and not hard work to the point where you're burned out, but balanced towards strategically going towards your vision and investing in your skill that will get you there and so on. And that's fun. Like I truly believe that journey of growth is fun because it also makes you better human in the end as well.
Well, that was a fantastic story. Thank you for sharing that just
You're
about how
welcome.
you're able to help out that client of yours with opening her eyes. I think of like how sometimes where our eyes are like squinted per potential, and then there's other
Mhm.
times where our eyes are completely closed. But a lot of what you've been able to do for her is help her to keep opening her eyes and then keep them open.
Yeah.
So I love you're
Yeah.
able to do that for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's why I do what I do. Really. Really.
That's sick. What are some of the habits that have contributed the most to your success with just running your business, Maggie?
So I would say those were the habits that actually I started implementing after the burnout. So when I felt burnout, and that's what I wanted to say is that you're never think of yourself as a victim. You always have a choice, right? There's always something you can do. And also you can manage how you react to things that are happening to you. So after that kind of like a little bit of an anger and freak out, I said, okay, now what? Right? I can't control the decisions being made. I can't control the things. For now, I need the job. I have a family. I have mortgage. I have kids, all that. But what can I do about it? And what I did, I actually signed up for some high performance coaching. That the course, Facebook ads are just amazing this way. Like the course popped up in my feed. I was like, this is exactly what I need. I'm in. So I started doing the high performance. I started implementing the habits. And sometimes, the misconception about high performance is that high performance just gets you more productive or makes you do more things or work more. And that's not true. High performance is really creating that harmony in your life where you do rest enough and take care of yourself enough. And at the same time, become highly effective with the time that you do want to spend professionally, right? In your work and so on. So that couple, I would just mention like concrete habits that really helped me was first of all having some sort of morning routine and grounding myself before going into a day where drop the kids to daycare, go to the job, deal with all the issues that are coming up and so on, right? And that was gradual for me. Sometimes we think, we read books and the book says, oh, you need to have 4 hours of the morning routine. And you as a student think like, how am I ever going to do that? I have a job, I need to go to school and so on, right? So my concept for it, or the way I tell my clients, no, 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 start with the minimum you can do and then add on it. So if the only thing you can do is the 30 seconds of grounding breathing, and I will give you like one example, and I want you, Dallin, to try it out and let me know. Okay. If you get out of your bed, don't look at your phone, don't look at anything, just stand, close your eyes, ground yourself, and take 4 deep breaths on 4. So you inhale on 4, you hold on 4, and you exhale on 4. And just do 3 of these, which is like a 30-second thing every day. I guarantee you will notice the better you feel and how you handle your days better. And that an exercise, the breathing, you can do even throughout the day, right? So if you feel yourself like I'm starting to get wrapped up and busy and overwhelmed, pause, do those breaths, it will calm you down. It's a technique that actually Navy SEALs use when they go into a battle and the anxiety starts coming up. That's what they use, breathing. Okay. So, like having some sort of morning routine, it could be just that. It could be I breathe and I have a glass of water or coffee and calm. I'm not running. And I don't look at my phone for the first 15 minutes. You can start there, right? And then you can build on. And that's how I started 4 years ago. Now my morning routine is longer because, now I work for myself. Or my kids don't need to go to daycare. Like my life changed and I adapted my routine to that. But that's the one. Second one is really creating boundaries. Okay. Very often we think we can't do things or we can't say no and so on, and a lot of that is really, again, our brain telling that as that, and not even other people expectations, right? So in my corporate job, sometimes I thought like I can't say no to a meeting even though 3 people want me at the same time in 3 different places, and it's just impossible, right? So I would just get stressed about it and maybe like in my mind ruminate about it instead of just saying, hey, which one do I go to, boss? I have 3, right? What do we do? I can be in one. And what do I, or do you really need me in this meeting? I have 3 others. Like there's no agenda, right? Like what do you want me to do? So establishing those boundaries and just communicating better helps. Okay. And then the third one that helped me a lot, and I was already pretty organized like day to day, but when I started planning my weeks ahead of time, so spending 30 minutes on a Friday or Saturday, whatever, just looking at my week saying, okay, how am I going to do that? So for example, for you, for a student could be like, hey, don't leave all the learning till the end and try to learn, pull out the nighters. If you know you have a project that will take you some time, break it up and say, okay, how much time do I need? And how can I maybe every week spend some time ahead to prepare for it? Right? So much less stressful. You can create so much better output when you actually give yourself plenty of time to do things. And when you plan ahead of time, like a week ahead, then you can say, oh, okay, I thought I would work on this project on Monday, but something came up. Maybe I can move it to Tuesday, right? So you're not leaving things till the end of like last minute. And the more you plan ahead, the more proactive you are, the less emergencies happen in your life and in your day to day. So I would say those are like the 3 main ones that help me, and I encourage you to try, whomever is listening.
Yeah, you've really hit the nail on the head. I felt all of that. That's very powerful. Whenever I've had a lot of success or felt really good about things, it was generally because I was doing those things. There's really no amount of value or amount of, I don't know, just what you said about planning ahead. That's
Mhm.
absolutely crucial. Like if you want to be at a certain level, I think of like the most evil bad guy you can imagine. they have it planned out really far in advance. So
Yes.
when the superhero gets there, like, I know how you're gonna react, and I have that planned out. This floor is gonna drop below you, and there's gonna be sharks, and they know they've already, everything has been figured out. If you
Yeah.
really want to be the mastermind, if you want to get there, it really
Mhm.
does take planning it out ahead. I'll give you
Yeah.
another quick example. I got to go to this cool thing called Treehouse Talks, and they had this like retreat thing, and we got to
Mhm.
stay some time at this multi-million dollar mansion that this guy owned. And he was telling us that he'd planned out like where certain things were, where the pool was.
Mhm.
He'd been building this for a year and a half before
Mhm.
anything was ever done on the house.
Yeah.
And so if you really want to have that,
Mm.
exactly what you said, have an idea of what you want this to look like,
Mhm.
and then start from there and just
Yeah.
build a little bit each day.
Yeah.
And don't try to speed run the whole process. Take it one
Yes.
day at a time.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And I love the bad guy analogy. I didn't think about it that way, but yes, if we can learn anything good from the bad guy, is the planning for sure.
Well, it's just so intricate and
Yeah.
planned
Yeah.
out. Well, I think of like The
True.
Incredibles 'cause that's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
They see like there's the process, like this is
Mhm.
gonna happen,
Mhm.
Omnidroid's gonna attack, Syndrome's gonna save the day. It's very
Yeah.
logical, systematic, planned out.
Yes, yes, yes. And sometimes we think that actually planning constrains us, and it's not true. You are in charge and control of your plan. You can always change it and be flexible with it. But at the same time, to be fully creative and fully allow your mind to reach its full potential, it requires a little bit of structure. So that structure actually creates the freedom, and no structure is just chaos, right? And there's no freedom in chaos because you're just reacting to things.
Yeah, I've been reading from Seven Habits again, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, and something
Yes.
it talks about is
Yes.
you're either the second creation of your own creating,
Mhm.
or you're choosing to be the second creation of somebody else's desires,
Mhm. Mhm.
options, or
Mhm.
environment or whatever. So we get
Mhm.
to choose whose will and whose goals and whatever are we serving, our owns or
Yeah.
someone else's. And
Yeah.
all things are created twice, so
Yeah.
that's what I would share on top of that.
Yeah. And that's an amazing book. Like, I love this book. I read it so many times. And if anybody always asks me about a book recommendation, I'm like, if you haven't read that one, that's the class. You have to read it. So it's great that you're reading it. It's
Yeah,
an
I've
amazing
I've
book.
I've read it a couple times, and I've
Mhm.
learned in my life, Maggie, to not lower the value that things can bring. Like, sometimes I'll
Yeah.
say like, "Oh, I got everything out of this."
Yeah.
But you don't know if when you come back to it in a year, you're going through different struggles, different things will stand out. Like, it
Yes.
almost feels like a completely different book to
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yes, it's very true because you have a different perspective. And also, our brain cannot retain everything we learn. It's like 20%, right? So once you have certain foundation, then you can go deeper and become more masterful in that topic because your brain already sort of, how do you say, accumulated that foundation and made it automatic. And now you're operating at a higher level at a different perspective as well and at different times. And you'll get definitely different things. There's so much more from the same book or same material. So yes, agreed.
Awesome. Well, you've definitely came prepared to bring the value, and I appreciate you doing that, Maggie. What's something that you're trying to figure out right now that you could use some perspective or help on, that you're trying to get help on from people?
What am I trying to figure out? I'm definitely trying to figure out, like, my business is relatively new. So I've run it. When I started it, I was still doing my corporate job for a couple years, and I went full time and parted with my corporate career at the end of last year. So for me, this year is sort of figuring out my marketing and sales. So, like, messaging, communicating with my clients. How can I, you know, say the things that I want them to hear in order to sort of inspire them to invest in themselves and gain the value from coaching in a way that they will resonate with, that inspire them to action and so on. So that's my big work for this year, is really figuring that out, because that's the way I understand things is not definitely the way my clients understand it. So how can I teach them and communicate with them in their own language, right? So they understand. Yeah.
So basically being able to be in their mind and
Yeah.
understand like
Yeah.
what do they want and
Yeah.
helping them from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's cool.
It's not
Yeah.
easy. It's not easy, but it's a great challenge. It's a great challenge.
Yeah, I've heard of like Amazon reviews are pretty good, and then you can go on a lot of like YouTube videos, which I hadn't really thought about. I feel like sometimes
Mhm.
we go to the YouTube comments because we want to see something funny or we want to see that one
Mhm.
dumb thing or whatever. But there can be some really valuable nuggets in there, like
Hmm.
of like, oh, I like this, but this could be a little bit better, or what about this? There's
Mhm.
always things not left on the table, and maybe some of those problems are not worth addressing, but some of them maybe they are
Mhm.
worth using in the future. So there's a couple thoughts there, but
Yeah,
I,
those are
I would
good
say
things.
it's 100% a process. And for
Yeah.
me, I've been experiencing this in such a wonderful joy when I have a podcast listener reach out to me and be like, "Hey, you could do an episode about this," or "Hey, I like this about the episode." Because then
Mhm.
it's like it's not just a one-to-one conversation. It's like we could talk about all kinds of other stuff, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a deeper multi-channel relationship, I
Mhm.
guess, and
Mhm.
it's just bigger. I really love when that happens.
Yeah. No, me too. Definitely. Getting feedback and knowing that what you put out there resonates, and also, how can you improve? What can you do better or different or whatever, right? The topics you can think, I love that too. So I agree.
That's awesome. Well, I wish you the best of luck with that, and
Thank
I
you.
definitely would say you have the solid foundation and just overall everything necessary to help you get through that. And yeah, just thank you for coming on. Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share? And how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Dallin. Thank you for listening. I would say always remember that you have a choice, that you can be 100% responsible for and be 100% responsible for your actions and reactions, right? So we can't control other people and we can't control circumstances, but what we can control is us, I always say that's self leadership, leading yourself, right? I can control my choices, how I react to things, and so on. And when you do that intentionally, and I was just finishing a program that I ran for entrepreneurs in collaboration with a nonprofit, and like the main thing, which I feel great about it, that participants of this program had, is like, I heard you, Maggie. Be intentional. And that's what I couldn't have asked for better, because the more intentional you are, the faster you get what you want, really, right? And yeah, and the way to get in touch with me, so I guess the easiest is my website, stairwaytoleadership.com, and there you have links to my Instagram. I'm under Maggie Perotin, but Instagram or LinkedIn. I have a podcast that's called Diamond Effect, where I talk more about business, but there's a lot of mindset there, or high performance habits, and so on. So I'm sure even students could benefit from it if you if you want.
Yeah, well, definitely we'll check it out, and I'll have links to all of that in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on, Maggie, and just for what you shared. It was awesome.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Dallin. Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening, everybody.
Yeah. All right, let's